Yes people, what is good? I am BA, and this week I'm just going to do a sort of series summary as a whole for Deadwood. I feel like we were with it for a significant enough amount of time for it to deserve its own little cap-off video so we can say goodbye to it properly. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'm going to split it into sort of two segments. First of all, I'm going to go through the series thinking about my favourite storylines, and then I'm going to talk about my favourite characters. Season 1, I'm actually rewatching it right now for the third time already, and it throws a lot at you. Like if you're a first time viewer, who my friends are that I'm rewatching it with now, it does try and cram a lot in, but I feel like many great dramas do that. So straight away the gold claim instantly takes a centre stage when you get into the first 4 or 5 episodes of this. Obviously Wild Bill plays a big part in these first 4 episodes as well. What a great character to meet such a quick fate. But yeah, Mr. Garrett is murdered, so Miss Garrett is being helped by Wild Bill to assess her gold claim, and because of that you get the tension between Al and Wild Bill, and after Wild Bill passes we start to get a little bit of tension between Al and Seth, and I loved that whole storyline. I found it so gripping. Even before that, you forget about all the little sub-stories in season 1 which were so good. The smallpox outbreak, the saloon rivalry between Sai, who'd just moved in, and Al, and the tragic deterioration of the preacher, which I think is one of the storylines that, even long after the show's ended, probably sticks with me the most out of all of them. I also loved the episode with the grifters showing up. Even I was fooled by them. You can watch my reaction. I completely believed them to be who they were claiming to be. And it all took course essentially over one episode really, but yeah, it came to light they were there to rob from Sai's place. They were caught in the street and Sai executed them both. It was both a great little sub-story, but also a brilliant way just to demonstrate how brutal Sai can be. And of course we got the little blossoming relationship between Seth and Miss Garrett. I genuinely find it hard to give season scores out of 10, but what I will say was season 1 instantly gripped me, and also straight away I got this feeling while watching it that there was something special to it. Going into season 2, all sorts of shit again, things we forget about went down. Seth and Al basically hit the crescendo of their beef quite early on, and then I would say by the end of season 2, if not developing a friendship, at least a little bit of understanding, if not respect for one another. Mr. Walcott shows up. What a piece of shit that character was. I cannot believe how horrible this dude was. He just tore a hole through season 2, and it was so glorious to see him die by the end of it. And then there was that whole thing with Joni trying to break free from Sai, which sort of materialised at the end of season 1 but got into gear in season 2 with Joni opening her own brothel, getting them women in, and then it basically being torn to pieces by Mr. Walcott, killing 4 or 5 of her girls single-handedly. That's what essentially stopped it being a brothel, that one guy and his actions. Of course Seth's family arrive, which means he and Miss Garrett have to stop seeing one another. His wife and son are cool and he's trying his best to strike up a bond with his son, but of course that relationship is struck tragically short. The General and Hot Stetler, 2 more great characters by the way, are trying to tame a horse in their stable which breaks free and tragically kills Seth's son. The one thing that was actually spoiled in the comment section for me about this show, and it's a shame because I genuinely don't know how I would have reacted had I not known that information, but because I knew it was coming, I was more just looking to see how it affected things after the fact. And of course Seth, as stoic as he was still really affected by it, as was his wife. Just a horrific tragedy. And I would say the finale episode of season 2 is my favourite episode of the entire Deadwood TV series. What an amazing finale episode that was. And by the time season 2's finished, you realise in your head like this show's just going to be of amazing quality unless they completely change the writing team, because to me this all comes down to the quality of writing. And at this point you really realise how great this show is. And season 3 again threw so many memorable things at us. It made the Richardson character the single most lovable character in the entire show. Him and Aunt Lou had such a great friendship throughout that season. Obviously the tragedy of Aunt Lou's son, which just once again shows how ruthless Hurst was. She knew that something bad was going to happen to her son if he struck up a deal with Mr. Hurst about that gold claim, and surprise surprise, he was murdered shortly after them shaking hands. And yeah, speaking of devil, he was foreshadowed and introduced at the very end of season 2, but Mr. Hurst really showed his true colours throughout season 3 and became the show's primary antagonist 100%. Some of the stuff he did is just unforgivable, from threatening Miss Garrett to rigging every single system he can in the town. Oh, what a piece of shit he was. Also, the actor Jack showed up. It was quite an interesting plotline. It didn't seem to go anywhere, but, you know, who knows where it would have went, because the show was tragically cut short before that storyline was allowed to blossom into something bigger. It was still a nice little storyline throughout season 3, but yeah, it's a shame we never really got to see where that character went from there. And E.B. Farnham, you little shit. This was the season where the rat slowly scurried his way into my heart, and there just comes a point where you cannot help but like E.B. Farnham, even though he is the weaseliest rat snake-like little shit you have ever seen in your life. Somehow, amongst all that, he manages to find himself to be endearing enough for me to remember him as one of my favourite parts of season 3. Even though he was breaking the balls of one of my favourite characters in Richardson, some of his speeches toward Richardson in season 3 are literally legendary level roasts, and I will never forget the shit he said to Richardson in season 3. And Cy's weird descent into being an absolute maniac. Obviously, he's stabbed at the end of season 2. So by season 3 he's a bit jaded and still recovering. But then when he gets back on his feet, he chooses to be aggressive toward Joni, and then by the end of the series ends up shanking Leon for seemingly nothing on the balcony. Again, Powers Booth tragically died, and that storyline and character arc was cut short. It would have been so interesting to me to see where he went into season 4, and that's one of the things I truly regret when it comes to them cancelling Deadwood. And the other thing I wish we would have seen, which was tragically cut, was of course the fact that by the end of season 3 it seemed like Al was going to get Wu to rally an army of Chinese and arm them and have some sort of all-out war with the Pinkerton agency who were at the back of Mr. Hurst. That might have been a giant part of season 4, and I'm absolutely gutted we will never get to see that. That would have been amazing, and also would have cemented Mr. Wu as an even bigger legend than he already was throughout this show. And again, season 3 is just another 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10. 3 completely flawless seasons of television, really. And then 10 years passes and the movie drops. Thank fuck I was not watching this on TV while it was playing, because that 10-year wait for a movie to conclude things would have killed me. As a reactor, I'm happy I can choose shows that have had a definitive conclusion and I get to watch them in their entirety at my own leisure. And the actual elephant in the room regarding the movie for me is the reduced role Al has, but it tells a more delicate story regarding Al. I suppose we've seen him at his worst, we've seen him at his best, we've seen him at his boldest, and now we're seeing a man who is, you know, by the end of the film, a moment away from death, and at the start of the film, several days away from death. So while he's always watching over the proceedings of the town still, and does have a few great scenes in the movie, aside from that, he's very subdued and laid back, but that is of course because he is dying. He's not as powerful as he once was physically. Seth and Trixie definitely take centre stage in this movie for me, along with Mr. Hurst. From the moment Trixie shouts at Hurst from the balcony, that instantly sets everything into motion for the rest of the film. And then if Hurst wanting Trixie killed isn't bad enough, he's negotiating with Charlie Utter over his land, and when Charlie tells him no, he shoots him dead. I mean, if you had forgotten in those 10 years how much you hated Mr. Hurst, he did a really great job of instantly reminding you how much of a necessary to be killed instantly piece of shit he is. And in amongst that, there was still cool shit. Trixie and Saul had a baby, they had a wedding, and even at their wedding, Mr. Hurst shows up trying to have it arrested with 2 lawmen from a neighbouring town he believes will get the job done. Thankfully, Seth is there, instantly steps in, says they have no jurisdiction, and instead arrests Mr. Hurst, which is surely the best case scenario from that situation. Then on top of that, we see him give Hurst the old school ear grab, one of my favourite parts from the original TV series, so I'm so happy they brought it back for the movie. But even in jail, Hurst has a backup plan, and Seth's deputy has been bought out and is about to march into the sheriff's office and shoot Seth in the back of the head. But our girl, the absolute legend, one of my favourite characters in television history, Calamity Jane, notices something off about him marching towards it and just keeps her hand on her pistol to see what's happening. As he draws, Jane shoots him in the back, saves the day, saves Seth, and absolutely cements herself as one of the greatest characters in television history in my opinion. She's shown such vulnerability in the past when it's came to an actual tense situation, and in moments of fight or flight a few times she has broken down due to her past, and in that one moment she was able to put those demons to rest. And of course there was symmetry with the death of Wild Bill as well. You know, Seth was about to be shot in the head by a coward, and she was able to save Seth from being shot in the back of the head by this coward, which is something she was unable to do for Wild Bill. So it was an incredibly poetic way to handle Jane in the movie, and I just loved the way it ended up for her. And if that wasn't good enough, we also got to see her and Joni reconcile, so yeah, just perfect. And then it ended with what I believe to be Al Swearengen's last moments, and I suppose if you're gonna end the entire Deadwood franchise, as is HBO tradition, the protagonist has to go, which means we won't miss them, because we know there's nothing to miss, I guess is why they do that. Couple moving scenes at the end, one between the General and Seth, and then straight away after that we get Jewel talking to Al and rubbing his feet, and then Trixie reciting the Lord's Prayer with him, and I'm assuming a couple moments after the screen goes black he died. It was a brilliant film, and it gave the series the long deserved closure that it needed. Really high level. I'm assuming it's written by the exact same people, because it felt like walking into the same place, just 10 years had passed. And now I'm just gonna give like quick paragraph summaries of my favourite characters. I could go on for days about each of these people, but yeah, I'm just gonna list off my personal favourites. There'll always be ones you guys think I've missed out, and trust me, I did put everyone in my head while I narrowed it down. There's characters I like, but they're not necessarily my favourites, so these are my undisputed favourites. Richardson. He's just got that Forrest Gump quality about him. He's so simple, he doesn't have a bad bone in his body, and to me that's one of the most endearing qualities possible. In the same way that a dog was raised nicely. You know, a dog never has an ulterior motive. If it's a happy dog, that's it. You take it at face value. It's not hiding anything from you, and the simplicity of that is a really endearing quality. And Richardson has that same quality, and it really makes him one of the best characters in the entire show for me. Calamity Jane. From the moment I got to spend any time with her in season 1, she became an instant favourite. I loved the fact she was a woman operating in a man's world, shooting and swearing and drinking just like the rest of them, and she was able to handle herself. You also get instantly attached to her, I think, because of the care she showed for Sophia, and also the admiration and love she showed for Wild Bill. So from early on you could tell that even though she was this drunken, F-bomb dropping, aggressive lady, deep down she had a heart of absolute gold. Charlie Utter. Rewatching it recently, I got some of his early dialogue misconstrued, so didn't trust him, but yeah, looking back to it now, even when he was asking for money from that saloon to let Wild Bill play poker there, he was trying to store it aside to give Bill something to fall back on, because he knew he was going to gamble it all the way. So from day one he looked out for Bill, and even after Bill was killed he began looking out for Jane and Joni Stubbs, and he was just always the most honourable dude and never afraid of a confrontation. From the time that he instigated a fight with Walcott just so he could beat the shit out of him, from the time that he went to Mr. Hurst's door at night to call him a fucking coward. Charlie Utter to the end was a legendary character, and even though it was horrible to see him die in the film, he knew he was going to die for what he did, and he did it anyway just to get to tell Hurst to go fuck himself. Of course, Seth and Al, essentially our protagonist and antagonist in series 1. Seth is your classic guy who's a by-the-book lawman, stoic, quite short-tempered, and he's portrayed brilliantly by Timothy Olyphant, and Ian McShane's performance as Al is potentially the single standout performance of the entire show. What a great character actor Ian McShane is. I completely bought him in that role, and if you'd have told me that was being portrayed by an English actor, I'd have been like, fuck off, there is no way he's got the accent that on point, because it was absolutely perfect. Joni Stubbs as well, just because when she was first introduced I expected her to be that. I didn't expect her character to have a drastic arc from her wanting to separate from Cy to wanting to start her own place, from it evolving into a schoolhouse and her still going to visit Cy from time to time after he was stabbed, for example, just to make make sure he's alright, and then finally her and Jane getting together. It was just a really more complex and interesting character arc than I ever would have assumed she would have got to begin with. Mr. Wu, again for me, sits probably on the pedestal of the Trinity, which for me would be Richardson, Calamity Jane and Mr. Wu, maybe my top 3 definitive favourite characters of the show. Introduced subtly just as essentially body disposal, we soon saw that him and Al had a mutual understanding and funny broken English conversations, etc. They always had each other's back through thick and thin, and Wu's loyalty to Al and the way he handled himself and was standoffish when he needed to be, stubborn when he needed to be, always firm but fair. I loved the way the Wu character was portrayed, and I loved the way that he kept everything cool in Chinatown for Al. He was basically a mini Al in Deadwood for Chinatown, and it was great to see him still alive and kicking, and now with a godson in the movie too. What a great character Mr. Wu was. Dan, I would have never have thought I would have been loving Dan so much after season 1. You know, he was basically the hired muscle, a mercenary, a murderer, but throughout seasons 2 and 3 they really showed that deep down he's got such vulnerabilities and insecurities and needs to appease and be loved by Al. It just made him incredibly endearing, and by the time the show and the movie were over, I don't think there would be anyone that didn't love Dan's character. Jewel was a much smaller character as well, but I really like how she was handled. She put up with a lot of shit throughout her life and still went through every day being caring, considerate and had a smile on her face. And I also loved that subplot of the doc helping her with her leg. Ellsworth is a happy-go-lucky, unlucky guy, seemed like a very cool person, was very noble and honourable, almost knight-like towards Mrs. Ellsworth, especially after they were wed, cared a lot about her, and yeah, just was the wrong guy at a time where people had beef with his wife and was unfortunately shot dead. A tragic end to a very likeable character. And Miss Ellsworth herself had a great story arc, from being introduced into the show as just a dope addicted wife who was sort of nonchalantly saying "well done darling" to everything her husband said while her head was in the fucking clouds, to becoming a very sober, responsible guardian to Sophia while doing the right thing with her gold claim and fending off all these people trying to take it from her, and having the foresight to open a bank, and in the movie outbidding Mr. Hurst for Charlie Utter's land after he had died. It was a great way to end her story, and if anything I just feel bad that her and Seth were never to be together. Wild Bill was only in 4 episodes, but he maintains permanent residency in my head. I absolutely loved that character. Such a cool character, and such a piece of shit thing to do when Jack McCall shot him in the back of the head. Oh, it was tragic. I wish we'd have got a couple of seasons of Wild Bill, but it was certainly shocking when it happened. But still, for those 4 episodes, that guy just completely captivated my attention when I was watching, and even when I'm rewatching it now, 3rd time in, I absolutely love the Wild Bill character. He's just died, by the way. I just finished episode 4, so yeah, I'm reliving the tragedy for the 3rd time over here right now. E.B. Farnham. I hated the guy so much, and yeah, like I said when I was doing my series summary, he just wriggled and weaseled and slithered and scurried his way into my heart, and by the end of it I just found him quite endearing in a certain way. A special shout out to him being so awestruck when he was using the telephone in the movie. And as a villain, you have to give it to Cy. When Cy showed up, it was just a different level of threatening energy. Powers Booth, the actor, has a really imposing, threatening energy. I'm assuming he was quite a tall actor, because in most scenes he's like leaning in on someone and saying some fucking deep, grisly voiced threatening shit to them. And he's so good at doing that. The only person that spoke down to him essentially the entire show without him saying shit back to them was of course Mr. Hurst, and he turned into a bit of a lapdog for Mr. Hurst, but showed deep resentment in doing so. And I do believe that if we had went into a season 4, we may have seen a shift where Cy turned against Mr. Hurst, but alas, we will never know. But regardless, I just want to make a special shout out to Powers Booth because I know he passed away, and of course the actor who played Richardson and all the cast now that were involved in Deadwood who passed away. All great actors, but yeah, R.I.P. Powers Booth, what a performance aside. And Doc Cochran, just a pure through and through nice character, desperately attempting to save as many lives as possible, trying to give people the best advice whenever he can, just not a bad bone in the guy's body. Throughout every single season, I loved his character, and the one thing I loved about season 3 was they were setting it up like he was about to die, and he did not. He was still alive, and we even got to see him again in the movie, and that made me so happy to know that the Doc had survived whatever the fuck he was going through come season 3. And all in all, what a great show, and I'm happy I was able to react to it for this channel. Thank you to my patrons for voting this to be the show I reacted to. If I didn't have such cool patrons, they could have had me reacting to 25 seasons of some whack shit, but no, my Patreons are legendary and suggest classic shit, and I'm so happy I got to watch it for the channel so that you guys could experience it once again afresh through my eyes and see how I took it in for the first time. Sometimes I was wrong, sometimes I was on the pulse, and you guys were along the ride with me all the way, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And whenever you miss these, feel free to come back and revisit them, because I had a blast making them for you. If you've liked this video, click like, subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this, ring the bell to be notified as to when they drop. If there's anything you want to talk about, comment down below, and share this around to anyone you think might appreciate it or want to watch these reactions along with us. My Patreon link is down in the description. If you become a patron, you get access to my blog, you get access to these reactions I put on YouTube a month and a half in advance, and you also get access to full-length versions of everything I react to. So consider becoming a patron, it helps me and my channel out so much, and until next time, I have been BA, peace.